Big news on both the domestic and the Super Rugby front. Lots of things to talk about in this part one of two-part specials for this week. Let's get into it.
I need all the wins, yeah. Ain't no L's, I gotta get it, no call it quits, yeah. Gotta keep on moving no matter how hard.
Here comes Danny Tusizawa, back to Baker, Baker with the fin. Kurt Baker in for DC, and this may well do it old glory with the try. The New Zealand Sevens legend, Kurt Baker with the cherry on top.
Can you believe it?
Welcome back to the On the Line Rugby Podcast, a show brought to you by the Believe Sports Network. I'm your host, Mike Nagaishi, and welcome back. Sorry for the wait, guys. It's just, between the hectic holiday and everyone else in America really talking about either one of four things: the NBA, MLB signings, the college football playoff, and the NFL playoffs. It made zero sense to really get anything out there, as it would just be bloated by all the football things, whether or not it's on social media or on the podcast side. And on top of that, not really a lot of news going around right now. Obviously, yes, we're still in the off season. Most kickoffs don't start till maybe early to mid-February at earliest. I mean, I know Premiership started already, but we don't really get it here unless you want to pay, and I don't want to pay. So we're not going to talk about highlights. But anyway, let's just go into what are the main things we're going to be going over this week. On top of obviously our normal news and reactionary things that I normally grumble about. Over the last 2 weeks, we have done a kind of a mailbag, I guess, poll on both my Twitter and my Reddit accounts. And we got some couple of questions that I feel like I'm very qualified to at least grumble about to a decent degree. So that will be a part two of the two-part segment to kind of make up. So happy hunting, I guess. Today is your treat. And let's get into it. I think the first major thing that we need to talk about is, on top of LA releasing their signups, their signings, there was just a couple things that I didn't really go over in the signing reaction and squad reaction post that I did for that show. I think it was a couple weeks ago. Was that Dan Hollinshead had gotten signed. Obviously, a lot of people know just because you got signed to a team doesn't mean you're probably going to play. And it doesn't even mean that you're on, squad listing doesn't mean you're actually signed, or doesn't mean you're even going to get minutes. So most of the time, I'm just going to go with who got drafted and who's coming from Rugby ATL. And unfortunately, Hollinshead obviously didn't meet both, so he was kind of put to the sidelines. But now that he's signed, it shows, a preemptive approach by LA/ATL to really get their new, 10 that they're really highly publicizing some minutes. I don't know how they're going to do that with all the guys they have on the field. But by the looks of it, the way that, I think a team's social media strategy should really show you exactly where they're thinking of going. And if you look at their social media, they did nothing for Jordan Chait. They did nothing for Matt Anisev, at least to my knowledge. And it's just been pretty bare. Other than Hollinshead, he's the only guy showcased on there. So I think that is an indicative standpoint of where the squad is looking at least primarily going to open up the year. And I think that opens up a lot of problems for a numerical number of reasons, just off of who's going to get minutes, obviously. So, as we all know, or at least I didn't know because I didn't cover Rugby United when working with Rugby Pass or really watch Rugby United New York. But, Rooney, I guess, had some promise. So here we go. He last played in the MLR in 2021. He led Rooney with 111 points through 11 games. So pretty good average. I know he had 2 tries. A lot of it was off of conversions. He has since been playing with, I'm going to probably butcher this, but Vaughn in the Pro D. Just based off his highlights, at least from his 2021 campaign, I looked at a lot of things where he was named MLR Player of the Week, which was twice. And he plays extremely flat to the line. He likes to throw a lot of late balls, so he'll use himself and his body as a dummy to really just draw in more defenders and set himself out in space. I do realize he has a nice little burst off his initial acceleration. Obviously, this is 3 years ago, so it probably got better or worse. Yet to be seen. But I wouldn't say is necessarily one of the fastest 10s I've seen on the pitch, at least in the MLR standpoint, in comparison to a Rita Biddle or a, let's see, who's another fast 10. I guess you could say a Luke Cardi, but we'll see. But anyways, so I think the biggest question that I think this throws out is, what does this mean for Matt Anisev, who was named as a fly half for whatever reason? I still think that's wrong. And a Jordan Chait. At this point, I really don't know. You draft Anisev in the first round, you obviously expect him to have that impact. And I think he has more of that in spades, at least as a standpoint from a college player that I've seen recently, than Hollinshead. Now, Hollinshead obviously has pro experience. He's led teams like that down the stretch. Rooney, at least to my knowledge, was a pretty decent culture, so I'm sure he brings that to the table. Chait obviously comes from the Stormers, the Sharks, and the Seawolves, and he's been playing pretty solid through most of his career. I probably personally, if it was just me, would have put Anisev in 12 to 15, maybe 15, and put Chait at 10. But now having Hollinshead in there, I think with the way that they're going, they're probably going to look at Hollinshead as their starting 10 with Chait as the backup, and Anisev either as a third choice option that probably won't start, but that defeats the purpose of having a first round pedigree to then move as either a third choice 10 or a second or third choice 15 behind Andrew Coe. I think that's kind of stupid because you invest all that money in that player. You want them as a first rounder to be an immediate impact starter. You're going to play from the jump. And I just don't see that as of right now. I think that's a bad look on LA. I'm sure they know more about me in terms of why they put Anisev at 10 rather than 15. I realize he can play at 10. I realize he can play also at 12. But I feel like if you look at the way he plays well with a lot of space. He has a decent leg. You could do above average, but he has at least average leg. So you wouldn't necessarily see him going kicks, and he's definitely not beating Andrew Coe at that or in the step department, but he's just a gliding runner. He needs to run with space, and you're not going to be able to do that really from the flat line unless you're giving him that almost Bowden Barrett-esque decision-making that I don't think you're going to give to a rookie, especially in the MLR. It's just, even though you played 3-4 years of college, it doesn't really mean jack if you're not going to be able to really translate that to get film to, not only state your team, but sign other places. And perhaps that's why Hollinshead is getting more of a, I guess, push for the starting job. But we can kind of infer that, and we'll see how it goes. Obviously, hopefully they'll publish their training camp footage, and Anisev can at least develop further. But I think that shakes up a lot. I think that gives it a very crowded room. They already have, I think it was Sam Walsh, the USA Sevens player, also in 10. So now they have 4 to 5 talented 10s, at least on paper, to perform at that spot. Now, obviously, that leads into the age-old question of, is having too much of a good thing a problem? If you look at for example, from my football fans, the San Francisco 49ers, when they had Steve Young and Joe Montana, everyone has egos. Everyone wants to contribute. Everyone knows that they can play the game a different way. Obviously, Anisev, Chait, Hollinshead, and I'm sure Walsh all play in different ways. But I'm pretty sure ego is going to get at least one of them, and it's going to break up that room. They need to figure out how to distribute the amount of minutes, not only between them, but between the positions, to then put either Anisev in a utility, Walsh in a utility, something. They're going to need to figure out a way. Not a lot of team guys are going to be like, oh, yeah, I'm down to just, ride the bench and never get minutes, or, whatever. It doesn't matter how talented you are. You're always going to want to get minutes, always going to want to contribute in some way. And that could obviously be a problem. So LA is playing with a little bit of fire. It's going to be interesting to see how they get that done there. As if we move to a little bit to the Southwest, I think the Jackals hit another home run. I think I should take that back. It's probably like a triple and like a double. So I guess kind of a home run and change. You kind of get what I'm saying. But they're both out of Toronto in the dispersal draft. I'm glad these weren't published till now, because I feel like they wouldn't have gotten as much panache as I think that they should have gotten. And that's just going to be them signing Mitch Richardson and Nick Ben from the Arrows. Still a tragedy that they're gone from the MLR. I really loved watching them. MLR stats, I love you. You know I care about them Arrows, but it's going to be good to see them contribute, in another franchise, especially one in so need of talent as Dallas. Obviously, Richardson has played, a lot of minutes for Toronto, most of them for the full 80. He's played and started in 28 of his 38 caps, so that shows a lot. He's a captain for a few of them, at least in the games that I've covered in Rugby Pass. He was an electrifying player, he scored 8 tries. I really love the way that he played. He's a very big team player and a leader. A lot of guys on the Arrows I've heard respect him, at least in my sources back in Toronto. From what I've watched, I watched a game again. I think it was against Old Glory. Maybe it was New England, where I'm pretty sure they got blown out. But like it was just to the point where Richardson was just that guy. Like you could tell every time he was trying to jump up and make a tackle. I feel like at least for a good 3 minutes, he was making every play, simply because they were so injury depleted last year that he had to shuffle into multiple positions. I think he played flanker at one point. He played 12. He played fullback. I'm pretty sure he played 10 too. That guy was all over the field, and he was making plays on and off the ball, whether it was forcing a ball to get out of bounds, and to touch for a little bit of a penalty that would have saved them a try, or, some like magical tackle, or just, doing the easy things. As I've always said, when you're a coach or you're a player, you just want to see your teammates doing the job and trusting their other teammates to fill in for you, to just everyone does their thing and we all succeed together. It's the little things that really separate us as players from the rest of the crop. And I think that starts right there. And Richardson shows that in spades. I think he'll be perfect for Dallas's leadership unit to just kind of grow the culture and obviously to fill in multiple positions. That guy is a freak. I think what I was really surprised in, though, is a guy I did not see until now, Nick Ben. Obviously, he was picked second overall, so it kind of shows exactly like how hype he was, at least going into them from the Dallas Scouts. They traded up to get him. So, I mean, there is something. And watching the film from 3 years ago, the guy shows a lot of promise. He's a little bit of an uphill runner, but he's a thumper. I mean, this guy, you're going to hear this a lot through this part 1 of the podcast, but this guy actually hits. He makes plays. I watched his 7s and his 15s highlights, between, getting textbook tackles, not going high, going at the hips or lower, dropping his legs, making those tackles, rolling up, trying to go for a jack opportunity. May not be the most successful, but at least making the effort to do so is huge, at least from a forward's perspective. Watching a back do that, I love. At least on the ball, though, running with it, he has a decent amount of gas. I wouldn't say he's probably the most fastest player out there, but he's able to take multiple defenders, whether it's with a fen. He trucks props. That should show you something. Name a winger or a 12 or 13 that can truck a prop. Not a lot. And this fool, dribbles them. So I'm impressed with that. I love this high ball skills. He mossed a couple fools in a couple game footage that I've seen. I loved it. I think he will develop. Obviously, I think he only played 1 game and then was for Toronto off the bench, and then was either injured in that game or injured in practice after for a season ender. So his rookie year technically doesn't count, in my personal opinion. So this will be his real tryout for him, his debut. And I think he's going to ball. I think Dallas is going to love him. And I think they're going to get more butts in seats because of this guy. Because let me tell you, this guy has some gas, and he's going to be a lethal player. In other MLR news, before we go into Super Rugby and some of the interesting takes that they had there, the Force did sign Tom Franklin away from the Legion. Obviously, as everyone knows, he's a former Maori All Black lock. He's played 2 seasons with the Legion, 11 starts of 13 caps from 2021 and this past season of 2023. When he's been in the games, according to the stats, the Legion was 7-4. That obviously bodes well, just showing that out there. I think when I've watched Legion games, and I feel like I've watched a lot being on the West Coast, I don't think his name is really flashed off of me. I recognize the face, obviously, from the Maori All Blacks, but, I think off of impact and eye test, I don't think it really showed out to me. Obviously, there's something there for the Force to sign him, and I may just be reading it wrong. Perhaps I wasn't looking too deep into the Legion footage I have had over the last 4 years. But hey, props to him. Get a better deal. Proud to see that. Good to see some players advance, at least in this league, or at least more, I should say, advance from this league into Super Rugby. As for Super Rugby, I thought that your socials were a little cheeky there, my friends. I don't know what you guys were thinking of when you guys did this fan poll for players to watch. Obviously, I share some of the opinions now looking back at it, but some of these I was just like, what are you thinking? At least in terms of example, they voted, at least fans voted for Cam Miller from the Highlanders, Teddy Wilson from the Taws, Harry Godfrey from the Canes, Lalo Milo from formerly the Chiefs, but now he's in Moana Pacifica, Henry O'Donnell from the Force, and Jeremiah Murray from this, formerly from the Taws, now, Taws U23, now he's with the Satyrs. As for Miller, I don't really agree with how he's a player to watch personally. Obviously, I don't have a lot of the schoolboy film that I'm sure a lot of people in New Zealand know and love. I'm sure if I talk to my homie, the Black Jersey, shout out to him, by the way, on his new gig. Props to you, Max. Proud of you, my boy. But, if you look at the way his film has broken out, at least in the last year, I was not able to also see as a U20 team that won in Australia. According to a lot of the statistical breakdowns that I've seen from Ultimate Rugby, he's played 4 matches, started 1 last year for the Landers, and he scored and converted. Everyone knows that try. It was really, I think it was him against Damien McKenzie in a foot race, and I'm pretty sure he beat McKenzie for that try. Just looking at what I was able to see, he shows a nice bit of acceleration, but I've yet to see how he will develop just because the entire 10 room is upended with Mitch Hunt gone. Obviously, Josh Yawan is still gone. I'm pretty sure they lost Marty Banks and friends. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, it's a pretty empty room. So obviously he could go into a starting gig now, and I'm pretty sure that's why fans voted for him. But it's hard when, at least for me, having not a lack of film to be able to truly look into some of these players, Miller included. So I will have to look into him more this year, given the high praise, and we'll see what happens with that. As for another player, it was really hard to watch, was Jeremiah Murray. There's only really one score from his U23 that I was able to find. So I'm not really going to talk about him too much, but seemed like an average wing. As for another player personally that I was more interested in, Lalo Milo, who I didn't really get to see a lot of, at least on the film that he was in. I looked at all of his matches with the Chiefs, didn't see much. I couldn't find his U23s where he played for New Zealand and had some thumping hits that they had on one play showcase. One play. Come on, guys, you got to do better than that if you want me to see things like that. But the guy looks like he can hit. As for his minutes, I mean, he scored mostly garbage time, basically in 2 bench appearances for Waikato. He has a Laumape-esque ability to run with power and hit with power. I think he doesn't hit. He hits harder than Laumape, but he runs with that Laumape speed. And just kind of that sneaky power. He has a little bit of a step on him, which I really like. And as a defender, he just loves to shoot. But when he gets home, he hits home. And that hit looked terrifying. I would not want to be at the bottom of that pile, because I'm pretty sure he's Fijian, would absolutely destroy me. So, yeah, that's really it for him. I think he could really be, at least from the limited, I'm talking like under a minute level of film that I was able to watch on him, maybe a bench option to an off chance starter for Moana in the centers or back row. He plays really at center, but I could see him slotting there. He has that kind of mentality for forwards. He could be a chunk. Let's see what happens with that. In terms of my third place, I would say that I really got to see was Henry O'Donnell. He was teammates with Teddy Wilson on their U20 run in Australia with the Wallabies. He's a sevens player at heart. He replays 15s, but a lot of his, I would say, power is what was showcased in sevens that I could tell. He has a full use of acceleration and power for as tall as he is. The guy looks like almost like a Matt Antsev, where he's tall and lanky, but has like, I wouldn't say that kind of a Antsev level like glide, but it looks like he's more forcing the ground with some power, which I like in a way. He has a quick burst, but I don't want to say that he will be using his height well on the ball. For as tall as he was, I expected to see a lot more high ball play. I didn't really get that out of the film that I watched, which was like, I think 15 minutes long. So, perhaps there is. I don't really know, at least in that. But that was also from 3 years ago at 2021. He's a really tall tackler. I don't really like how he tries to wrap at the pec and above level. That's not obviously going to transfer into Super Rugby in a huge degree. Perhaps he does go lower, perhaps not. I mean, it was mostly sevens film I was watching, so maybe it's like, just trying to stop them from offloading the ball, which I know a lot of us like to do. But I was expecting more, personally, from a center at least. I would like to see him retain his leg drive more through contact. He did have a decent one, but I want to see it developed. And I think he could be an option if he's developed. But I think I would need more film on at least him in Super Rugby to make a better breakdown decision of his expectations. I think it was a hard bite for first, but I think, I'm sorry, Harry, but Harry Godfrey, my boy from the Hurricanes, you're gonna have to take a little bit of an L here to Teddy. It's because you'll see why. So Godfrey is a U20 Cane and an all black standout for U23s, coming from the 10 and 15 utility. He started 2 of his 8 caps, which is pretty good. And for a young player, I watched, I think, one of his games where he started. Kind of hurt me in fantasy, but we're not going to talk about that. But he was a unit on the pitch, at least when I saw him, just off the eye test. I mean, he has a nice glide. He has a superb ability to read space and pass and kick through contact. I thought that was huge. When you look at a player, it doesn't matter if you do it in schoolboy or in some sevens tournament, as if you can do it against the best. And I still think Super Rugby has probably the best of the best players on earth. I would dare to say that it was between them and the Premiership. Now you can kind of argue, but his ability to not only just offload, kick, grub, through contact, I thought was insane. I think he adds a little bit extra to the fact that he can play 10 and 15, just because the Hurricanes, which we'll talk about later, have a little bit of a problem in the 9 and 10 and fullback role in their depth chart. So it'll be interesting. He's a try-assist machine, I think. I don't think he'll be scoring a lot, but I think he'll be setting up a lot of fools to score. I'm excited to see him. Perhaps Ruben Love and him as the duo would be a filthy 10 and 15. I don't know. That is my take. We will see, and I'll break it down in a little bit. But that's really it for Godfrey. He's probably my second place. I agree wholeheartedly with that, him being on this players to watch list. As for the person I really liked, this is coming from a guy that not only watched his U23, but also watched his games with the Taz. Teddy Wilson is a freak, okay? Now, hot take. This guy, I'm serious about this, could be Australia and the Wallabies saving grace at 9. I'm not saying Tate McDermott is trash. That boy is nice, but, this guy brings a different level of juice. And, if he just fixes a couple things, he's the holy grail. I'm telling you, holy grail. Okay. As for just a little bit of a summary and then his performance breakdown, at least in my opinion, before I get a little bit too hyped, Wilson was a part of the U23 team that just won in Australia for, winning in home field. He played 6 matches, all off the bench for the Taz, and he scored against the Blues. I thought his score against the Blues off of just a dirty pick and go off the ruck was impressive, to go through. I think it was Mark Talea, Kira Yawane and friends. That was some serious guts, and I'm glad he was able to pull it off. He lives on the gain line. This is something I love. I love when a 9 and 10 and kind of 15 can play flat and just either wreck house running with it or be able to throw at the last second. Beautiful. Bowden Barrett, you used to do that. Now you really don't. Pretty sure it's a concussions, but that's a topic for another day. He has an impressive step, lots of power. His fin is Marshawn Lynch-esque, and I dare not use Beast Mode's name in vain, but that boy got power. I don't know what he lifts. I want to know. I want to know what subs he's on because I need some of that. As for just his ability in contact, he loves to get skinny. I think that's a good thing. Not only is he protecting his body, but he's also, obviously gaining an effortless ability to gain extra meters through contact, not just through driving his legs. And on top of his gliding strides on the ball, he's a thumper off the ball. This fool, I've never seen a 9 tackle with such intensity and maddening strength. For his size, and he's a tall 9, to really be able to get low and light up a guy on the other side, then in mid tackle now, somehow magically release and then go straight in and then secure a jackal with an easy takeaway with no ruck formed. Beautiful. Hats off to you, Harry. Teddy, you a good guy. Let's see. What's another thing I can think he could do? Another hot take. I really see him taking away the spot from Jake Gordon. Now I know Jake Gordon is a nasty boy, but I'm telling you, Telly Wilson is the truth. This boy could go and take over. And when he's allowed to do what I know he can do, league better watch out. I think we got one of the best players in Super Rugby on the TAWS right now. Also, shout out to homie Max Jorgensen. I know you didn't get to play in the World Cup, but you about to be a star now with Ben Donaldson gone for the TAWS, and I can't wait to see that happen. As for me, my personal players to watch and a little bit of some narratives, they may be a little basic, I understand, but they have great storylines that as a media person myself would love to see play out on the field. And I think that these will be the storylines of the season that I think maybe in one topic a lot of people will talk about and somewhere a lot of people won't talk about. The first one, we'll go from fourth, in my opinion, up. I think that the return of Ryan Crotty and the signing of Leigh Halfpenny to the Satyrs was a interesting move that I think needs to be talked about more. Obviously a lot of people on the Satyrs know Ryan Crotty. I personally was not able to watch him live just because he was always out for injury. And I think by the time I started getting into them around 2019, he had left for Japan. So, but looking at his film from about 10 years ago, so like 2013, 2014, he was a savvy player with a heavy knack in his IQ. Obviously, being that I'm not going to say a similar player to Ryan Crotty, but I was never the fastest or the strongest player on the pitch, but I had a great IQ and I always tried to put myself in position to make plays or at least be in the best position to succeed. And I love to see that from savvy players. And Crotty showed that in spades in his highlights for not only the All Blacks, but for his provincial sides and his minor 10 cup sides in the NPC. I really like to see that. He is consistently putting himself in the right spots to make plays. He's a great uphill runner. He runs with a lot of power. His fen and truck are nice. I'm sure he probably still has that a little bit. Obviously, it's been 10 years since his career was at his peak, really at the peak of his powers. So perhaps a lot of this has fallen off. We've yet to see, but it would be nice to see where he goes with that. He's really just an oldie but a goodie. But I think what he does is he brings a lot of stability and leadership to the Satyrs position at center, which has been gutted with injury. You had Jack Goodhue go down. You had, let's see, who else? Braden Enor go down. Leicester Fainga'anuku, who technically played center, but mostly played it wing, is gone. Let's see, who else did they have? Havili is pretty much now like the 10 or 15, even though he played 12 for a lot of his time. So a lot of instability in that lineup, and I think he'll slot in perfectly to really just be that 1-2 punch in that center spot between him and hopefully a nice development player, or maybe Havili slots back at 12 and Fergus-Burke takes the reins at 10, or Fergus-Burke moves to 15 and Havili plays at 10. Either way, Crotty, I think, needs to bring that kind of old Crusader culture that Iron Man level mentality, and I think he does that in spades. It'll be interesting to see how he performs with the Crusaders. As for Leigh Halfpenny, I was a big fan of him when I first started watching rugby in 2018. Obviously, his prominence has fallen off due to a lot of injury, but he was a legit threat, I think, when I first started watching from between then and 29 to maybe 2019, if you stretch it, but at least his 2018 season. Perfection. Dominance. I loved it. But his roster injuries, I'm sure, has caught up to him. I think it'll be interesting to see what he brings at this stage of his career to the Staters, where he'll slot in. If Havili plays at 10 and Fergus Burke is at 15, will he come off the bench? Can he handle coming off the bench? I'm sure you probably have paid a good lump sum of money to get him down to Christchurch. So I'm sure you're not going to waste him in that regard. But, he's a world-class guy on and off the pitch, on and off the ball, especially off the tee. I think he'll teach a lot of young kids in Christchurch and Canterbury how to play winning ball, and it'll be interesting to see his contribution there. I think that the next biggest one is, where does Revez Reihana go in his career? Now, I know a lot of you guys know him from his Waikato days, his Bay of Plenty days, and on top of that, his career, notwithstanding, with the Chiefs. And I think it was a shocker, at least with me, that he was not able to at least battle it out to kind of fight for minutes with Cortez Ratima and Tohiorangi for that 9 spot. I really did not like Tohiorangi, but he's still there. And obviously the coaches and Clayton McMillan and, Warren Gatlin just know a lot more about what to look for in a 9 than I do. But I really thought, based off his prominence in that spot, that he would have been the boy to be for the Chiefs until Ratima just went off and became a star with Brad Weber. Being that as it may, I think the Crusaders for him would be like his last chance U spot, just to kind of develop. Obviously, Razor's not there. Scott Hansen's not there. So it'll be interesting to see where the Staters go, at least in that regard, into how he's going to play. I think he's going to get the starting minutes over a lot of the other depth. I think Mitch Drummond is still there. I know Brent Hall's in Japan. But, they're an interesting part to see where he goes. In terms of just where, I could see him slot, perhaps he's a second choice, but he's going to need to do something, or I think his career is shot, and he may just have to go back to the NPC and just get some film, because he's a talented player. I don't know what happened, but fix yourself. Excuse me. As for my second one, I think it's going to have to be Ben Donaldson and Harry Potter for the as the duo of Australia, really, at this rate. A lot of people know Ben Donaldson from his Wallaby career. I don't think a lot of people in Super Rugby fans know who Harry Potter is. Harry Potter, yes, he's the wizard from the books. Yes. Harry Potter in rugby, though, is a wizard. He's a fast wing, comes out of, I think it was Leicester. I'm probably butchering the name, whatever. But I've watched him play, and he makes everything from running full field, making effective catches, kicking and scoring and finishing his pride and joy. He is a wizard. Him in the Premiership was nasty to watch. For all my MLR fans, imagine a 2019-2020 Harley Davidson, for all those who know, school teacher. But he's a freak, and it'll be nice to see him and Donaldson kind of go play off each other with the Western Force. I think Donaldson was an unsung hero of how the Taz played a lot of their games this year, and just working through all the injuries they had, whether it was through Max Jorgensen or, the rest of their team kind of getting banged up. Donaldson was that guy. And I think him and Harry Potter will finally be able to just diverge and create their own path, rather than being stuck with Darren Coleman and Steve Borthwick and friends in that old Leinster club. But, they could easily be duo of the year, I think, given the relatively thin rosters. And I think they will be a interesting matchup to go to Perth and just watch them go to work. It'll be fun to see and fun to do. And they're going to be amazing at doing it. As for my first and biggest storyline this year, what in the hell are the Canes going to do on their 9, 10, and 15 spot? There are a lot of questions in that backfield, and I can't wait to see what they're going to do with this. The Canes are crowded really at 9, 10, and 15 with stars. In 9, you got TJ Perinar. You got now Richard Judd from the Legion. You have obviously Cam Roygard, the freak of nature himself, who just, I think, tied. I'm not sure if he beat, but tied at least Bowden Barrett's Bronco record of 413, if I'm correct. Then you got Brett Cameron and Aiden Morgan at 10, now having to fight for their lives against the homie himself, Harry Godfrey. And obviously 15, you got Ruben Love. I personally was not a fan of how Brett Cameron and Aiden Morgan did as much as the black jersey was. I'm not saying they're junk. By all means, they're not a slouch. But I think at worst, to me, they were middling game managers that I thought could have been elevated based off of what the Hurricane brand is. To me, the Hurricane brand is what Bowden Barrett and homies did, where they were flat to the ball, not afraid to run through, not playing a game of kick tennis like what Caleb Trask is known for, and managing the space a little bit more and letting Jordy Barrett play. That wasn't how the Canes were. I would like to see the Canes go back more to brand. But with, in other words, with Perinar back and Richard Judd coming in from the Legion, I think that puts a big target on Roygard's back. I'm not saying he's going to lose a spot. Don't get me wrong. But I think that forces him to not only learn from those two older players, but on top of that, always be battling for minutes, which I think is going to be good, because competition always brings out the best in everyone, I think, personally. And it should be interesting to see. As for Ruben Love, I think putting him at 15 is a waste. Same thing with Bowden Barrett. I'm not going to go over this again. Put him back at 10. We've seen what Ruben Love can do at 10, and he's an absolute unit. He plays better flat to the line. Don't give him space. I wouldn't necessarily say he has the greatest boots on top of that. Boom, right there. You know who has a good boot? Harry Godfrey. Wonderful leg. Put in there. But the lineup, in my opinion, should be as follows, at least just to watch Magic play. If they were to follow my plan and kind of be on brand with how the Hurricanes are, should be Cam Roygard at 9, Ruben Love at 10, Jordy Barrett at 12, Billy Proctor at 13, Josh Morby at 11, Celeste Riassi at 14, Harry Godfrey at 15. I think if they want to succeed and continue to develop at least Riassi's off-the-ball performance and let Godfrey be loose, that's the easiest way to do it. And, you're not going to get it by beating around the bush with this one. You're going to have to play all of them at some point. I just don't know how it's going to be. Whether or not there's going to be a bolting exodus or not is yet to be seen, but it'll be interesting to see. And that's going to be it for me for this part 1. I will see you in part 2. Peace. You got to rock your hips like this, ladies and germs. Here we go. Part 2. Let's get into it. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the On the Line Rugby Podcast, a show brought to you by the Believe Sports Network. I'm your host, Mike Nagaishi, and welcome back. Part 2. Here we go. This is the mailbag segment. We got 2 topics. Really just going to blow through them as fast as we can. These are some questions. I've gotten one. I picked one finalist out of 10 from Twitter and one finalist from 25 out of my Reddit. So let's kind of break it down. A big thing from the Reddit was, why did it take so long to create the MLR Globen Rugby Summit, I guess you could say. Now, the summit was announced by Globen and the MLR through social media accounts, not really through news, and a small highlight post that kind of showed off some of the things that they did. I believe it was in New York or Chicago, based off of the skyline. I wasn't really paying attention that much to it, but not really too important. It was done with over 90 orgs from leagues and media from all around the world, whether it's through traditional news, like, your streamlined local channels, or obviously your sports media, your Foxes, your ITVs, your, I guess Believe would be counted as that kind of. Shout out to the homies that Believe. Sky, etc. I'm sure we all can figure it out a little bit off of that. Just to kind of collaborate in a 3-day event in the hopes that, not only will this be an annual event, but that this will foster more international cooperation through all the different sports and news media organizations to work together and create a better product. It obviously was really just run by Globit, not really a lot of MLR by looks at participation on that regard. I'm sure the MLR new sponsor, being that it's Globit, looking at the rugby network that replaced us, cough, cough, that they are really just focusing on marketing. And, looking back at their accounts, since I'm not really familiar with Globit, they're a UK-based marketing firm that specializes in media networking, utilizing emerging tech like AI to really just create things that put clients at the forefront. Obviously, they're still working with, I think, one of my old coworkers' marketing firms too, as well, in the Pacific Northwest. I'm not sure. I'm pretty darn accurate though about that. And their overall focus on both fronts is just to create better PR and try to move the product forward. I think this is where the new design for the app came in. A lot of the taking off of news and article-based formats, moving towards getting things like the Premiership for paid. I think they're trying to do the MLR season paid. I think that would be a dumb idea, but if they can make extra money, by all means do it. I'm sure someone will pay for it, just not me. So that'll be interesting to see how they work with that. In terms of where the organization, I think, follows is that I think the MLR is just lacking credibility in that regard from their ownership and from, they're coming at this from almost a new toddler-esque perspective, just because they haven't had the credibility through the U.S. government until really just till the World Cup here. And excuse me, from ownership that they could move forward. And given that a lot of players are not only thinking about transferring to other leagues, but playing in some on the side as well, or just thinking of just retiring and just focusing on their stuff, I think this is a big almost kind of push for the league to really just try to get as much players engrossed and transparent in the league so they can get the best NIL deals. They can get the forward thinking things. At least I hope that's what they're going for. This is all just theories on my end, so consider it almost like water cooler talk. I think the reason why it took so long really is just because of their lack of funds. USA Rugby and World Rugby as a whole, talked about this before, has been bankrupt for a long time. At least in USA under Kevin Battle, they were bankrupt for a long time. Not a lot of resources, not only for refs, for clubs, grassroots level encouragement, but the Eagles themselves. That's why you see a lot of USA players like, AJ McGinty playing in the Premiership, or, guys like Samuel Malolo going to Super Rugby. Not a lot of stability here. Franchises close down literally almost every year. Someone scandal happens. It's corruption, debt collection. It's nothing is stable here. There's no guarantees for any player that I think are guaranteed in other countries, and I think that's terrible on that end. And I think that all comes from lack of funding and really just lack of infrastructure. They just expect athletes to just show up and play and grow the game like that. That's not how you do it effectively. You got to start with like I said, great product on all fronts. And you're obviously not doing that right now. So that needs to be fixed. And I think they're taking a head step forward in that regard. I think there was no excuse, though, to come up with the right amount of player equity and private equity funding given them and media conglomerates to come do this. Or hell, not even not to do this, but just to be involved in the way that they are. I know a lot of, excuse me, sorry, I'm a little under the weather. A lot of people are really looking at the league as kind of like the ugly stepchild, at least in sports. And not a lot of people know about it. And, with the amount of not only athletes we have, the amount of forward-thinking media markets, advertising, private equity firms. Look at Silver Lake. Silver Lake is an American company. On the down low, they're an American company. So we're investing in Super Rugby. Why can't we invest in the MLR? We have all the sports media contracts in the world. Bally Sports, yes, they're kind of going under basically the writings on the wall. Fox Sports, great place that has shown off rugby. CBS, great place that has shown off sports. local news channels. A lot of these guys broadcasting the games, unfortunately, are either team hired, like regional, like for San Diego, we used to use TVX Sports. For LA, we used to use Bally before they were Sportsnet. Just local small businesses, they need to start using more local stations. They need to start doing more, at least high school level broadcast quality to get this thing going. And there's nothing that really stopped them from doing this from the get-go. And it wasn't about money. Because if you obviously can get Bally and Fox to be like your bread and butter, get SeatGeek to be on your name of your stadiums and all this kind of stuff, you really had no excuse there. And I think it's sad. It's taken this long, especially as like a media professional by trade. This isn't rocket science. All it takes is a bunch of people getting together in a room and divvying up better finances. Perhaps it was maybe the rumored corruption in some places, or, the lack of forward thinking. A lot of people didn't think of the streaming world as a great place to be. Obviously, the Rugby Network did it for free for a long time. Hence the lack of quality. But I think they need to gain that equity back, not only from the fans, from coaches, but players too. To just get better products on all fronts. And I think this was long overdue. Should have been done years ago. I think this should have been done obviously before the investment of the league. But I think, like I've said prior, it's probably because they wanted to keep a lot of the pro rugby players from that league together and just immediately just be like, hey, we have a new league. Jump in. Same thing. Still lack of obscurity, but you're safe. And that's it. And I think that's sad on so many levels that had to happen. But if that's what they thought it could take, perhaps that's what it was. Perhaps I'm wrong, but in a perfect world, or at least in a sensical world, this shouldn't have been that long. I think this should have been done by 2018, probably 2016, and just forward brainstorm till then, and you guys would have had a better product by now. But being that as it may, that's where I stand on that. As for the other question, this I thought was the best one. What would it take to get a good rugby game out there? Now, obviously, there's a lot of games out there, whether you're looking at Rugby Challenge, Rugby, the iterations like Rugby 20, 23, etc. You got your Jonah Lomus, you got your Rugby Challenges. Let's see, what else? Rugby Nations on the iPhone, which I think is a pretty decent game for what you're getting. You got your Jonah Lomus, your Rugby 08s, your etc. The list goes on and on. There's not a lot of good ones out there. I think the last good one personally to me that I've played is Rugby 08 on my PlayStation 2. And I only got that when I started rugby. I didn't even know that game was a thing that EA Sports did. I don't know why they don't do it anymore. And Jonah Lomu, I've seen great things from. Gus Pichot, the biggest proponent of this, I think is sad to say, but he doesn't see it coming unless he either gets the helm from Bill Beaumont or but it is gaining momentum. But it's going to take a lot for it to get out if he's not chairman of World Rugby, which is sad. But I think all they have to do is really take homage to a lot of the good professional games that you've seen succeed. A lot of people want a lot of games to go back to that OG, mid 2000s, early 2010s level of immersion in sports games that I think we've lost to the passage of time, simply because of not only commercialism of the sport, laziness on the developers, but just, on top of that, just the money. I'm sure they're not pumping money into these games, even though they buy a lot. So that's why there's a lot of, wire transactions on these games, microtransactions of players. There's ultimate teams on every sport for a reason. They mostly recycle, head sculpts, stadium sculpts, players, etc. A lot of it's now almost minimal evolution. It's more iteration rather than innovation. And I think that's a really strong, sad sticking point to a lot of these games that I think we need to look at. Excuse my notifications. But just looking at it, I think what a good thing that they should look at really is NFL Blitz, NFL Street, and NCAA football, and kind of the old 2Ks. You could maybe say the old Maddens, like, when they had immersion, like Madden, I think up to Madden, 12? Madden 11? they had a pretty good immersion in that regard, whether it was the commentary or player customization. But I think these 7 things are where it's going to really be a strong place to really start and build a foundation for. I think they need to create an extensive roster of using teams from NIL that pays the players, obviously, from all world teams, whether it's international or your club. Every game has their individual strengths and weaknesses. Rugby Challenge tends to focus on the Southern Hemisphere. So they have your South Africans and your New Zealand and Australian teams. The head sculpts may be wrong on some of them, but they're there. They're licensed. That's good. Rugby 20-ish all focus on the Premiership. So they have, or at least they did before. Now they had generic guys, but the squads were the same and generic sculpts. I think now they're focusing more on the URC and Pro 14. Based off of what I've seen from Squidge and a couple of reviewers on YouTube. So I haven't really gotten it. And the game looks kind of bland. So that's a whole nother thing. Rugby Nations on the phone has everyone, but they have a lot of half-baked sculpts. The stadiums aren't great. The gameplay isn't that great, but they have the names. So that's there. And the stats. And they have all the guys. They have Johnny Sexton you could play as, etc. And I think the stats are relatively where they're supposed to be. I think the second one is they need to create a massive custom team playbook and player unit that you can do, whether it's everyone wants to have their own team. Everyone wants to do their club team from high school. Or for me, I want to do my team from college or my league and union clubs that I've played on. I want to just create them. So, I think that's one thing that's missing. You have rugby and in the Premiership rugbies, they have the creative team, and it's okay. It's not great. Rugby Nations does it like Ultimate Team. You just pick a bunch of cards and have players, and the stats aren't that great. It's not that hard. Get some playbooks, get some schemes. NFL's been doing this for years. College NBA has been doing this for years. Just get the playbooks. Whether you gotta custom create them, license them, have modders do them, however you want to do it, and bring some good physics. I think as a player unit, that'll be perfect. If you can just create, a guy that can play, say 12, but can jump into 7, and then you have a storyline in the game and be like, oh yeah, slot in here. Perfect example, easy plug and play ability for that in that regard. And I think the third would have to be, they would have to utilize proper broadcast commentary from guys like, Kane Holmes, you got Carl Tanana, let's see who else. Ricky Swanell, Dalen Stanford, Mark Stabina, anybody. Just get the Ugo Monye, get quality commentators to actually do their regional games. Whether make it a world game. I think everyone will want to play it if it's a world game, maybe not a regional game, and it'll increase fanships because now players want to play with different people. Maybe people who watch Super Rugby will watch the Premiership or watch the Pro 14 and the URC. Something. Maybe players won't even watch the MLR or Super Rugby America. Who knows? It all happens with the world game. And, having the regional commentary like for Dalen Stanford for the MLR, or having Carl Tanana, Ricky Swanell, and Kane Holmes for the Super Rugby games. Huge. Ugo Monye and friends for the Premiership. Great. Japanese commentators, especially for the Japanese top games. That'd be great. There need to be Japanese teams because I think they would be filthy in those games. But that and physics. I think NFL Street and NFL Blitz, both made by, I believe, Midway, did a great job. Obviously coming from Mortal Kombat fame, they're known for their great fatalities. Their ability to produce, kind of Madden's, I guess, to produce real injuries. Like everyone knows the Greg Jennings meme. I put the team on my back though. But they purposely shown, he has a broken arm, he has a broken leg. Let's have him run with it, or have him bust an ankle and show a X-ray shot, and be like, the ankle drop, and now he's on the sideline getting treated by the trainer. Or they have him at least in NFL Blitz, they had a mini game where you could shoot him up a cortisone and have him back on the field, magic. And these are in the mid 2000s. You're telling me you can't put these in modern games? That's sad. That's easy things to get fans going. Because I'll be honest with you, even for 2K, I think 2K fell off a little bit, and commentary wise, they're trash now, and it needs to be better. As I've talked about, this is the fourth one: create immersive injury plays. Fifth, I think you need to have a decently sourced international soundtrack. I think it should be, NFL kind of tried to do that with Madden and Madden Tracks, and they didn't do a great job. 2K does, I think, a good job of getting a good soundtrack for basketball, but I think they need to do better. I think their best one that I've heard is 2013 and 2020. I mean, shout out to my homie Trey who's on there. But it's interesting. Maybe go through it like a Tony Hawk type of thing. Get some regionality. Maybe have some I don't know, some Zulu beats for South Africa, or some Japanese things. I guess K-pop too. I guess, I don't know, some like drill rap for Britain for the Premiership. Get some regional songs. Get people hyped up to play in their league. So if they load in like a Premiership, it's just all like UK based stuff, European. And then if you load up in some New Zealand stuff, it's like Catch a Fire and like a couple other things. AC/DC. I don't know, something. I'm not saying pay for these massive licenses, because these are going to be extremely expensive, but try a little bit. Maybe get immersive. Get some up and comers. Do what Madden Tracks does. Do what 2K does. It's not hard. Get 2K to do the game. I don't care. Somebody. I'm sure anyone could do this game better than what they're doing right now. But that's really on the soundtrack end. I think the biggest thing is, don't make this a pay-as-you-go service game. Don't make this an Ultimate Team. Don't make this anything. Real games, what people come back for, yeah, it won't make as much money because Madden and 2K print money for that, but like, eliminate microtransactions. Just make it standard. Stop adding these X factors and bonus plays and, bogus stats where if you get like a Tom Brady from like 2020, like it's not good. It's like a 60-something overall player. And then like you got to level them up and stuff. That's just keep them base stats and just let it be a simulation. Or if you want, turn it into an arcade. Make it NFL Street. Make it N1 basketball. Something. Put in the Harlem Globetrotters, Scooby-Doo. I'm sure there's other ways to make this an iterative, innovative, and entertaining game that doesn't involve pumping in money through microtransactions and cards. There's going to be something, and I'm sure they're just lazy to do it, but there has to be something. And I think the seventh thing and the biggest thing that I think I would love to see is do what 2K does and showcase classic teams. Madden used to do it. Now they don't. Really sucks. But like every team should have like a different era. Like, for example, like the All Blacks from the 70s or the 90s, or the back-to-back All Black years, or the Springboks from the last 2 World Cups. Put in a combined team and just have them be like, okay, I want to face like the Sale Sharks versus the 2019 and 2023 Springboks, and just have them just battle it out. I think that would be a great thing. Or even to have like different players every year, like how 2K does it with Kobe. They did it with Jordan. Let's see who else they did. They did Shaq, I think, one year. Have different moments that they play throughout their career. Make it immersive. Include some audio from the game, maybe some interview opportunities that they did after. I think that'll be a cool shot. And I'm sure a lot of people would want to try it. Now, obviously, you'd have to market it a little bit because not a lot of people know about rugby, but the rest of the world already does. Come on, guys. It's the second most popular sport on earth next to soccer. It is the one of the fastest growing sports. I think it might get eclipsed by pickleball, but in Americas, come on. We can do better. You know it. I know it. Let's make it happen. But that's going to be my end of my part 2. Thanks again, guys, for coming to watch. See you guys next time. Peace.